Captain Tae Do-hyun floated in the observation deck of Genesis 7, Earth's largest orbital station. The blue planet turned slowly below him. Peaceful and unaware. He had been staring at the incoming transmission for 10 minutes now, reading it again and again. His hands were shaking. The message was simple. Too simple for what it meant. Primitive species of the third planet. You will surrender all mining operations to the Krellian Empire. You will provide 60% of your annual resource output as tribute. You will accept our governance. You have 48 hours to comply. Refusal means death. Tae pressed the communication button. Admiral Kang, you need to see this. Within an hour, the command center was full. Admiral Kang Bora stood at the head of the table, her gray hair pulled back tight. Beside her sat Park Woojin, the chief military strategist, and a dozen other officers. They all read the message in silence. How many ships? Kang asked. 200, ma'am, said Lieutenant O. Gina, pulling up the scan data. They appeared at the edge of our solar system 3 hours ago. Big ones. Each ship is at least twice the size of anything we've built. Park Woojin leaned forward. Have they made contact with any other nation? They sent the same message to everyone, Tae said. China, Russia, America, the European Union, everyone. They don't seem to care about our different governments. To them, we're just one species, because that's what we are, Kang said quietly. She looked around the table. This is what we prepared for. 20 years ago, we picked up their radio signals. We knew we weren't alone. We knew they might not be friendly. We built these ships. We trained. We hoped we'd never need it. She paused. Hope is gone now. We could negotiate, suggested Colonel Shin Nari from the corner. Maybe give them something small. Buy time. No. The word came from Dr. Han Minho, the thin scientist who rarely spoke at military meetings. Everyone turned to look at him. I've analyzed their language patterns and the cultural data embedded in their transmission. The Krellians don't negotiate with species they see as inferior. If we show weakness now, they'll demand more. Then more, until there's nothing left of us but slaves. Park Woojin nodded. The doctor is right. I've studied their battle tactics from what little data we captured from their signals. They follow a pattern. Find a new species, determine their strength, then conquer or destroy. 47 worlds, whispered engineer Choi Yuna. How many people? 47. 1. We don't know, Han said. But based on their communications, they rule at least 200 billion sentient beings across their empire. The room fell silent. Earth had 8 billion people. They were nothing compared to this empire. Admiral Kang stood up. Send them our answer. Tell them Earth refuses. Ma'am? Tae said, uncertain he heard correctly. You heard me, Captain. We refuse. If we're going to die, we die. Standing up. She looked at each person in the room. Activate protocol vigilance. Get every ship ready. Contact every military force on Earth. Tell them this is not a drill. Tell them the war has started. The next 24 hours moved like a dream. Tae watched as Earth's small fleet gathered. 45 ships, built in secret over 2 decades. They weren't pretty. They weren't advanced by alien standards. But they were theirs. Captain Lee Jinwoo commanded the Indomitable, Earth's newest and fastest ship. Commander Jung Hae-yoon led the stealth division. 5 small ships designed to be invisible to most scanners. General Ryu Junho coordinated ground forces, just in case the enemy tried to land. The Krellian commander, Vix Thera, responded to Earth's refusal with what sounded like laughter in the translation. Amusing. We will enjoy breaking your spirit. The Krellian fleet moved closer. They didn't hurry. They had no reason to. From their perspective, this was already over. Tae stood on the bridge of his ship, the Defender, and watched the alien vessels approach. They were beautiful in a terrible way. Smooth metal surfaces that seemed to absorb light, weapons ports that glowed with purple energy. Ships that moved with a grace that Earth's clunky vessels could never match. "They're not even trying to hide," said his second officer, An Sung-ho. "They think we're no threat at all." "Good," Tae said. "Let them think that." The first strike came without warning. 3 Krellian ships broke formation and fired at the outer colonies. Mining Station Alpha, which housed 15,000 workers, simply vanished in a ball of fire. Colony base Serenity on Ganymede exploded. The farming settlement on Titan went dark. 50,000 people died in less than 5 minutes. The Krellians broadcast the footage on every frequency Earth used. The message was clear: surrender or watch everyone die. On Genesis 7, Admiral Kang watched the destruction with cold eyes. Around her, people cried. People screamed. People begged her to surrender. She didn't move. "Captain Tae," she said into the comm. "Execute Phase 1. "Yes, ma'am." Tae's fingers flew over the controls. All across the solar system, Earth ships began to move. Not toward the Krellians. Away from them. Scattering. Hiding in asteroid fields. Behind moons. In the shadow of planets. "They're running," came the translated voice of Vix Thera, filled with satisfaction. "As expected from primitives. Ready the occupation forces. This world is ours." But Park Woojin, watching from Earth, smiled for the first time in days. "They think we're running. They have no idea what running looks like for humans." On Mars, in the underground research facility, Dr. Kim Sora looked at the genetic samples they'd collected from old Krellian probes. After years of study, she finally understood their biology. These aliens had evolved on a clean world. Perfect conditions. No diseases. No parasites. No real threats. Earth had been a nightmare world by comparison. Humans had survived everything: ice ages, plagues, predators, and each other. Earth had made them strong through suffering. "I've found it," she said to Dr. Han over the secure channel. "I've found their weakness." Back in space, the Krellian ships moved into orbit around Earth. Vix Thara looked at the beautiful blue world below and imagined the tribute it would bring. The resources. The glory. He had no idea that humanity's real weapon wasn't ships or guns. It was 4.5 billion years of evolution on a planet that tried to kill them every single day. It was the stubborn refusal to quit that had carried them from caves to stars. It was the dangerous, crazy idea that being weak today just meant you needed to be stronger tomorrow. The Krellians had won their message, said. They would learn the truth soon enough. They hadn't started a conquest. They had started a war. And humans were very, very good at war. Captain Tae checked his weapons one last time. Behind Earth's moon, hidden from sensors, 30 ships waited with him. "All units," he whispered. "Hold position. Wait for my mark." The trap was set. Now, they just needed the Krellians to walk into it. The Krellian fleet settled into a standard occupation formation around Earth. Vix Thara stood on his command deck, satisfied with how quickly the primitive species had scattered. His tactical officer reported that most human ships had fled to the outer system. "Cowards," Vix Thara said. "Send squadrons to hunt them down. Start mining operations on their moon." 20 Krellian ships broke off from the main fleet and headed toward the lunar surface. They moved slowly, casually. There was no hurry. The humans were beaten. Behind the moon, Captain Tae watched his sensor display. 20 ships. More than he expected, but it would have to do. "All units, weapons hot," he whispered. "Fire on my mark." The Krellian ships rounded the moon's horizon, expecting to see mining equipment and perhaps a few scattered human workers. Instead, they found 30 warships waiting in ambush, weapons already locked on target. Tae didn't hesitate. Mark. 30 ships opened fire at once. But they didn't use energy weapons like the Krellians expected. Engineer Choi Yuna's railguns spat tungsten rods at impossible speeds. The projectiles were simple, just metal bars, but moving at a significant fraction of light speed. The Krellian shields, designed to deflect energy beams and plasma, did nothing against solid matter moving that fast. 3 ships exploded immediately. 4 more were crippled, their hulls punctured, atmosphere venting into space. Impossible! Vixthara roared as alarms screamed across his flagship. How are primitives doing this? The human ships didn't stay to answer. Following Tay's orders, they fired 1 volley and then scattered again, diving behind the moon, into nearby craters, anywhere the larger Krellian ships couldn't follow. Captain Li Jinwu, commanding the Indomitable, led his squadron through the debris field of the destroyed mining stations. The wreckage that had been humanity's homes now became cover. His ships wove between spinning chunks of metal and ice, using the obstacles like a maze. The Krellians, used to honorable space battles in open areas, found themselves confused. Their big ships couldn't maneuver quickly. When they fired at the human vessels, they hit their own debris or missed entirely. Li's squadron circled behind a large piece of wreckage, then emerged firing. More tungsten rods tore through Krellian hulls. Another ship went dark. They're using guerrilla tactics. One of Vixthara's officers reported. This is dishonorable. Vixthara's face flushed with anger. In 3,000 years of Krellian conquest, no species had fought like this. It was wrong. It was unfair. It was beneath civilized beings. It was also working. By the end of the first hour, the Krellians had lost 30 ships. 30. Against a supposedly primitive species with inferior technology, Vixthara ordered a retreat to regroup. On Genesis 7, Admiral Kang allowed herself a small smile. Phase 1 is complete. How many did we lose? 4 ships damaged, ma'am, reported Lieutenant O. No casualties. All crew evacuated before the ships were hit. Good. Tell Captains Tay and Li to fall back to defensive positions. Activate the minefield around the Lagrange points. While the Krellians regrouped, Earth's leaders met in an emergency session. The victory had bought them time, but everyone knew it wouldn't last. The Krellians had lost 30 ships. They still had 170. Earth had 41 functional vessels left. We need to change the battlefield, said Park Woojin, studying tactical displays. We can't win in straight combat. But we don't have to win. We just have to make victory so expensive, they give up. They won't give up, said Colonel Shin. We humiliated them. Now, it's personal. She was right. Aboard his flagship, Vixthara composed a message to the Krellian High Command. He requested reinforcements, not because he needed them to win, but because he wanted to make the humans suffer for their disrespect. The High Command approved his request. 800 ships were dispatched to Earth, the largest Krellian battle fleet assembled in 500 years. When Earth sensors detected the incoming fleet, the mood shifted from hope to despair. 800 ships. There was no way to fight that many. Admiral Kang gathered her commanders again. We can't evacuate everyone, she said bluntly. But we can save most. Activate Protocol Exodus. Protocol Exodus had been planned for years. Every city had hidden bunkers. Every region had escape routes. Most importantly, humanity had been secretly building colonies in the Kuiper Belt, far beyond where any enemy would look. Small, hidden, enough to preserve humanity if Earth fell. Captain An Sung-ho led the evacuation fleet. Thousands of transport ships began moving civilians off Earth, off Mars, off every settlement. They didn't go to obvious places. They went to asteroids, to ice moons, to tiny rocks in the outer dark. If we lose Earth, we survive anyway, Kang told her officers. Humanity doesn't end with one planet. General Ryu coordinated the ground defense. Anyone who stayed on Earth would fight. Old and young. Civilian and soldier. They fortified cities. They built traps. They prepared for the worst. On the moon, Colonel Shin converted mining tunnels into a fortress. The low gravity gave her an idea. If Krellians tried to land troops, the environment itself would be a weapon. Test the exosuits, she ordered. Engineers had modified construction equipment into combat armor. In the moon's weak gravity, a soldier wearing an exosuit could jump 300 meters, could punch through metal, could move faster than anything the Krellians had seen. Shin smiled. It wasn't much, but it was something. Meanwhile, Dr. Kim worked frantically in her lab. The Krellian biological samples showed a species that had never developed strong immune systems. They had evolved in a sterile paradise. Earth, by contrast, was a biological war zone. Every breath humans took contained thousands of bacteria. Their bodies fought off infections constantly. We can weaponize this, Kim told Dr. Han. Common Earth viruses could be deadly to them. We just need a delivery method. How do we get close enough? Han asked. Lieutenant O volunteered before anyone could ask. I'll take a boarding team. Plant the bioweapons on their flagship. It was suicide, probably. But O had watched the footage of the destroyed colonies over and over. 50,000 people. Men, women, children. Gone. I'll do it, she said simply. The Krellian reinforcement fleet arrived 6 days later. Vixthera now commanded nearly 1,000 ships. He looked at Earth, small and blue, and felt satisfied. Surround the planet, he ordered. Prepare for orbital bombardment. If they won't surrender, we'll burn their world. But as his ships moved into position, Commander Jung's stealth squadron was already among them. 5 small ships, invisible to Krellian sensors, drifted like debris. They had been waiting for days, powered down, cold as space itself. Jung watched the enemy ships surround her position. She waited until they were perfectly arranged. Then she activated the nuclear mine her ship had been sitting next to. The explosion was massive. It caught the Krellian fuel convoy in its blast. Ships exploded in chain reactions. 60 vessels were destroyed or crippled in seconds. Jung's ship was vaporized instantly. She died without knowing if her sacrifice mattered. On Earth, Admiral Kang watched the explosion and closed her eyes. Jung had been a friend, a good officer. She would be remembered. How many ships do they have left? Kang asked. Approximately 740, ma'am. Still too many. But Earth would fight with whatever they had. Because that's what humans did. When the odds were impossible, when defeat was certain, when any sane species would surrender, humans got angry. They got creative. And they got dangerous. Vixthera stared at his tactical display in disbelief. 60 more ships. These primitives had cost him 90 ships total. His honor guard had lost fewer ships in 100 years of conquest. No more games, he growled. All ships, prepare weapons. We burn their planet. We end this. But Earth's defenders had one more surprise waiting. And this time, it would change everything. The Krellian bombardment fleet moved into position above Earth. Vixthera stood on his command deck, ready to give the order that would turn the human homeworld into ash. His finger hovered over the firing control. Sir, his communications officer interrupted. We're receiving a transmission. Not from the humans. From the Galactic Council. Vixthera scowled. The Council was a collection of old, weak species who valued peace over strength. He had little respect for them, but even the Krellian Empire had to acknowledge Council authority. Play it, he ordered. The message was simple. The Council is monitoring this situation. We remind all parties of the accords regarding civilian populations. It meant nothing. It was a weak protest, a way for the Council to pretend they cared without actually interfering. Vixthera dismissed it, but on a trading ship in a distant system, Captain Bakerina of the Velthori species watched Earth's defense with growing interest. The Velthori had suffered under Krellian aggression for centuries. They paid tribute. They bowed. They survived by being useful and unthreatening. But watching these humans fight back, watching them refuse to surrender, even when outmatched, something stirred in Bake's heart. She encrypted a data packet containing Krellian tactical weaknesses and transmitted it on a frequency she knew the humans monitored. "For courage," she whispered. On Earth, the transmission was received by Park Woojin. He stared at the data in amazement. Ship schematics, formation weaknesses, supply line information. Someone was helping them. "Admiral, you need to see this," he said, but there was no time to analyze it. The Krellian ships were powering up their bombardment weapons. On the moon, Colonel Shin watched the enemy fleet through her observation post. "Here they come," she said to her troops. "Remember your training. Make every shot count." The Krellian troop carriers descended toward the lunar surface. They expected minimal resistance. Instead, they found hell. The moment the first carrier touched down, the ground beneath it exploded. Shin had buried mines across the entire landing zone. 3 carriers were destroyed before their troops even disembarked. The Krellian soldiers who did make it out found themselves in an environment they couldn't understand. The moon's low gravity was disorienting. They moved slowly, carefully, trying to adjust. Shin's troops, born and trained in low gravity, moved like ghosts. They bounded over rocks, jumped between craters, and attacked from unexpected angles. The exosuits turned them into monsters. A human soldier could leap 200 meters, crash into a Krellian squad, and be gone before the aliens could react. "What are these creatures?" One Krellian officer screamed into his comm, before a human soldier crushed his suit with powered fists. The battle for the moon turned into a nightmare for the Krellians. They had superior numbers and better weapons, but the environment was against them. Shin had turned the entire battlefield into a trap. Tunnels connected all across the surface, allowing human troops to appear and disappear at will. For every human that fell, 5 Krellians died. In orbit, Vixthara watched his ground forces struggle with growing rage. "Forget the moon," he ordered. "All ships focus on Earth. Burn it." The bombardment ships fired. Purple energy beams lanced down from space, targeting major cities. Tokyo disappeared in fire. London burned. Mumbai was gone in seconds. Billions of people died in the first hour, but most of Earth's population wasn't in the cities anymore. Protocol Exodus had moved them underground, into the massive bunker systems that had been built in secret over 20 years. The cities that burned were mostly empty shells, sacrificed to buy time. Admiral Kang watched her homeworld burn and felt each death like a knife to her heart. But she couldn't stop now. Stopping meant extinction. "Launch the counterstrike," she ordered. Captain Tay led the remaining Earth fleet in a desperate attack. They knew they couldn't win. They knew most of them would die. But if they could damage enough enemy ships, maybe Earth could survive. The human vessels came from every direction at once. From behind the moon, from the asteroid belt, from hiding spots around Earth's orbit. They fired their railguns and then crashed directly into Krellian ships when they ran out of ammunition. It was suicide. It was insane. It was human. Captain Lee, in the Indomitable, rammed his ship into a Krellian carrier at full speed. The explosion destroyed both vessels and damaged 3 more nearby. Lee died instantly, along with his entire crew. But their sacrifice mattered. Every Krellian ship destroyed was one less firing at Earth. Then something unexpected happened. On the edge of the battlefield, a new ship appeared. Not human, not Krellian. It broadcast on all frequencies in a language both sides could understand. "This is the Kiekstar hive ship. We stand with Earth." The insectoid Kiekstar had also suffered under Krellian domination. They had been watching the battle, watching humans refuse to break, and they had made a choice. One ship wasn't much. But then another appeared. And another. The Velthori trading fleet. The Dax Unity ships. The Morth defensive force. Small species. Weak species. Species that had been pushed around by the Krellian Empire for centuries. They all came to help the humans who had dared to fight back. Vixthara couldn't believe what he was seeing. This is a council violation. You cannot interfere in a legitimate conquest. You made it our business when you threatened to glass a homeworld, came the Velthori response. The council forbids genocide. Now Vix Thera faced a choice. He still outnumbered the combined fleet. But if he continued, it would mean war with multiple species. The political consequences would be severe. His pride won. All ships, engage all hostiles, destroy them all. The battle became chaos. Dozens of different species fighting. Ships exploding. Debris everywhere. The space around Earth turned into a graveyard of metal and fire. On Earth's surface, General Ryu coordinated the desperate ground defense. Krellian troops had landed in Asia and were advancing despite heavy losses. Human soldiers, armed with weapons that seemed primitive compared to alien technology, held the line through sheer determination. Private Yu Mina, a young soldier from Seoul, found herself facing a Krellian shock trooper 3 times her size. Her rifle was nearly empty. The alien's armor was too thick for her bullets to penetrate. She didn't retreat. She ran forward, dodging the alien's plasma fire, and jammed a grenade into its armor joint. The explosion killed them both. Stories like hers were repeated across the battlefield. Humans trading their lives for small victories. It shouldn't have worked, but it did because humans understood something the Krellians didn't. Sometimes, survival meant sacrifice. In her laboratory, Dr. Kim completed her bioweapon. It was ready. Now, they just needed someone to deliver it. Lieutenant O, as promised, assembled her boarding team. 12 soldiers, all volunteers, all knowing they probably wouldn't return. Our target is the Krellian flagship, O told them. We get inside. We plant the virus canisters in their life support system, and we get out if we can. And if we can't? Asked Sergeant Nam. Then we make sure it counts. O said simply. They took a small stealth shuttle, disguised as debris, and drifted toward the massive Krellian flagship. The ship was so large that it had its own gravity, its own city inside, thousands of Krellian crew. O's team attached to the hull and burned their way inside. Alarms immediately began screaming. They had minutes at best, fighting through corridors, taking casualties. O's team pushed deeper into the ship. Nam fell to plasma fire. Then Private Quan. Then Corporal Hong. By the time O reached the life support center, only 3 of them remained. She planted the canisters with shaking hands and activated them. Invisible to the eye, Earth bacteria and viruses spread through the ship's air system. The Krellians, with no immunity to these ancient Earth microbes, began falling ill within minutes. O didn't make it back to the shuttle. None of her team did, but their mission succeeded. Across the Krellian flagship, soldiers started collapsing. Fever. Bleeding. Their bodies had no defense against organisms that Earth life had been fighting for billions of years. Vix Thera, feeling the sickness take hold in his own body, finally understood the terrible truth. You don't conquer a species shaped by the cruelest planet in the galaxy. You don't break beings who learn to survive everything from ice ages to plagues to each other. Earth had made humans into survivors, and survivors were dangerous. The Krellian flagship drifted dead in space. Inside, bodies lay everywhere. The bioweapon had spread faster than anyone expected. The ship's advanced air filtration systems, designed to remove chemical weapons and radiation, had done nothing against simple bacteria and viruses. Vix Thara lay in his command chair, barely conscious. His skin was covered in sores. Blood leaked from his eyes and nose. Around him, his crew was dying the same way. Retreat, he whispered into the comm system. But the Krellian fleet was in chaos. 50 ships had already been infected when they docked with the flagship to transfer supplies. Those ships were now spreading the plague to others. Panic set in. Some Krellian captains broke formation and fled. Others stayed to fight, not understanding why their comrades were abandoning them. The organized fleet became a confused mob. Admiral Kang watched from Genesis 7 station, barely believing what she was seeing. Are they really running? Yes, ma'am, confirmed Park Woojin. Their command structure has collapsed. They're scattering. On Earth, the news spread like wildfire. The impossible had happened. Humanity was winning. People emerged from bunkers to see Krellian ships fleeing into the sky. Soldiers who had been preparing to die stood in shock. But the war wasn't over. Nearly 400 Krellian ships remained functional, and many were still firing on Earth's cities. General Ryu coordinated the ground forces as they pushed back against Krellian troops, who were now cut off from orbital support. The battle for Seoul became legendary. Surrounded by 10 times their number, the human defenders used the city itself as a weapon. Every building was a fortress. Every street was a kill zone. The Krellians, trained for open battlefield combat, found themselves trapped in urban warfare they didn't understand. Captain Quan Taiyun, who had taken command of Earth's orbital forces after Admiral Kang was injured by debris from a destroyed ship, saw an opportunity in the chaos. All Allied forces, coordinate with me, she broadcast to the Velthari, Kiixtar, and other species who had come to help. We're going to cut off their retreat. The plan was simple, but risky. While the Krellians were disorganized, the combined fleet would strike at their supply ships and fuel depots. Without resources, the Krellian fleet would be stranded. Captain Bake of the Velthori immediately agreed. My people have waited centuries for this moment. We're with you. The Allied fleet, small but united, struck at the Krellian rear guard. The surprised Krellian captains, already frightened by the plague and confused by the retreat order, offered little resistance. Supply ships were destroyed. Fuel tankers exploded. Stranded Krellian ships began surrendering. First 1, then 10, then 50. They had come to Earth, expecting an easy conquest, and found only death and defeat. But some Krellians refused to give up. A hardline group of 100 ships, led by Admiral Torque, decided if they couldn't conquer Earth, they would destroy it. They gathered at a safe distance and prepared for a final bombardment. If we cannot have this world, no one will, Torque declared. Captain On, commanding a damaged Earth cruiser with half his crew dead, intercepted the message. He looked at his remaining weapons. 1 nuclear missile. Not enough to stop 100 ships, but maybe enough to buy time. All crew to escape pods, he ordered. Launch in 60 seconds. His officers protested, but On was firm. I'm setting a collision course with their formation. The explosion might scatter them long enough for reinforcements to arrive. 1. Sir, you don't have to do this alone, said his tactical officer, Lieutenant Kim Hana. Yes, I do. You have families. I don't. Now go. Alone on the bridge, On armed the nuclear missile and aimed his ship toward the center of the Krellian formation. He thought about his sister, who had died when the colonies were destroyed. He thought about the billions who had burned when Earth's cities fell. This is for everyone we lost, he said quietly. His ship, moving at maximum speed, crashed into the Krellian formation and detonated its nuclear weapon. The explosion was magnificent. 15 Krellian ships were destroyed instantly. Dozens more were damaged, their formations broken. The remaining Krellian ships, finally understanding they were beaten, surrendered. 3 months after the first Krellian ship entered Earth's solar system, the war ended. The cost had been terrible. 3 billion humans dead. Most of Earth's major cities destroyed. The moon's surface scarred by battle. Dozens of ships lost. But humanity had survived. The Galactic Council sent representatives to Earth. They arrived in massive diplomatic ships, expecting to find a broken species begging for help. Instead, they found humans rebuilding. Already, construction crews were clearing rubble. Engineers were designing new cities. Soldiers were training for the next war. Ambassador Park Jae met the council representatives in what remained of Geneva. The meeting hall had no roof anymore, open to the sky, but Park stood straight and proud. We acknowledge Earth as a sovereign power, said the council speaker, a floating being of pure energy. We apologize for not intervening sooner. The Krellian Empire will pay reparations for their illegal attack. Park nodded. We accept your apology. We also have demands. The council members shifted uncomfortably. Demands? From a species that had nearly been destroyed? First, Earth wants a seat on the Galactic Council. Second, we want access to all medical and scientific databases to help rebuild. Third, we want the trial of Vix Thera and his officers to be public. Fourth, we want all species enslaved by the Krellians to be freed. The speaker was silent for a moment. These are significant requests. These are not requests, Park said firmly. These are requirements for peace. If you refuse, Earth will consider the Galactic Council as complicit in the attempted genocide of our species. It was a bluff. Earth was in no position to threaten anyone. But the Council didn't know that. They had watched the battle recordings. They had seen humans fight with a ferocity that scared them. We will grant your requests, the speaker said. News of the agreement spread across the galaxy within days. Earth, a species unknown 6 months ago, now had a council seat. The political implications were enormous. On the Velthori homeworld, Captain Bake watched the news with tears in her eyes. For the first time in her life, she felt hope. If humans could stand up to the Krellians, maybe others could too. The Chixtar Hive Queen sent a formal alliance proposal to Earth. We are better together, her message said. Other species, inspired by Earth's resistance, began questioning their own oppressors. Revolutions stirred on a dozen worlds. Dr. Kim published her research on Krellian biology, making it freely available to all Council species. The message was clear. Earth would share its knowledge, but it would also protect itself. Dr. Han led the effort to catalog Earth's biological weapons. Not to use them, but to ensure everyone knew they existed. Deterrence through knowledge. On the moon, Colonel Shin oversaw the construction of a memorial. Names were carved into the rock. 50,000 from the destroyed colonies, 3 billion from Earth, hundreds from the fleet. We remember, the inscription said, and we prepare, because humanity had learned a hard lesson. The galaxy was dangerous. Peace required strength. Survival required vigilance. Captain Tay, promoted to admiral after his role in the moon ambush, stood at the window of the new Genesis station and looked at Earth below. The planet was healing. Slowly, but healing. We were lucky, said Park Woojin, standing beside him. No, Tay said. We were prepared, and we were willing to pay the price. And that, Tay realized, was what made humanity dangerous. Not their ships or weapons. Not their tactics or technology. But their absolute refusal to accept defeat. No matter the cost. The galaxy would learn this lesson well. Earth had arrived, scarred but unbroken, and the universe would never be the same. 6 months after the war ended, Ambassador Park Jae walked into the Galactic Council chamber for the first time as Earth's official representative. The chamber was enormous. A sphere floating in space, with transparent walls showing the stars beyond. Representatives from 47 different species sat in their designated areas, each zone modified for their specific biology. Some breathed methane. Others existed as energy patterns. A few were hive minds, controlling multiple bodies. And now, one was human. Park took his seat in the newly constructed Earth section. Simple gravity, oxygen, atmosphere, comfortable temperature. The Council had built it quickly, almost desperately. They wanted humanity to feel welcome. They were afraid of what might happen if humanity felt unwelcome. The Council speaker, the energy being called Luxnar, addressed the assembly. We gather to discuss the Krellian situation. The Empire has collapsed. Their military is broken. Their government has surrendered. What remains is the question of justice and reconstruction. Park had studied the politics carefully. The Krellian Empire had ruled for 3,000 years. They had conquered 47 worlds, enslaved billions, and crushed any resistance. Now they were defeated, and the galaxy didn't know what to do with them. Earth proposes the following, Park said, standing. His voice was translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. The Krellian military will be dismantled. Their weapons technology will be shared with all former subject species for defensive purposes only. Vix Thera and his senior officers will stand trial for genocide. And most importantly, every 1862, all species under Krellian rule will be granted immediate independence. Murmurs filled the chamber. The Krellian representative, a thin, sickly-looking male named Keth, stood slowly. He was one of the few Krellians who had survived the bioweapon plague. You speak of justice, Keth said bitterly. But you used biological weapons. You created a plague that killed millions of my people. Is that justice? Park didn't flinch. You destroyed 3 of our colonies without warning. You killed 50,000 people as a demonstration. You burned our cities and murdered 3 billion civilians. You started this war, Keth. We ended it. The chamber fell silent. No one could argue with that. But, Park continued, his voice softer now, Earth does not seek revenge. We seek peace. Genuine peace. The Krellian people are not our enemies. Your government was. Your military was. We will help rebuild your world. We will share medical technology to cure those still suffering from the plague. But you will never again threaten another species. Keth sat down, defeated. The vote was called. Earth's proposal passed with overwhelming support. On Earth, life continued its slow return to normal. The cities were being rebuilt with new designs, incorporating lessons learned from the war. Underground shelters were now standard in all construction. Every building had evacuation routes. Every citizen received basic military training. Humanity would never be caught unprepared again. Captain Tay, now Admiral Tay, oversaw the construction of Earth's new defense fleet. The ships being built were larger, faster, and more heavily armed than anything humanity had fielded before, and they incorporated technology shared by Earth's new allies. The Velthori had provided advanced shield generators. The Kiekstar shared their sensor technology. The Morth offered engine designs. Earth was no longer alone in the galaxy. Admiral Kang, recovered from her injuries, met with Tay in the orbital shipyard above Mars. Do you think we'll need all these ships? She asked, watching a massive new carrier take shape. I hope not, Tay said. But hope isn't a strategy. The galaxy knows we exist now. Some will want to be our friends. Others will see us as a threat. We need to be ready for both. On the moon, Colonel Shin had transformed the battlefield into a training ground. Young soldiers from Earth and from allied species learned combat tactics together. The memorial to the fallen stood at the center of the base, a constant reminder of the cost of war. Shin watched a mixed unit of humans and Velthori practicing low-gravity combat. They moved together well, learning from each other. This is good, she said to her second officer, Major Yoon. When the next war comes, we won't face it alone. You think there will be another war? Yoon asked. There's always another war, Shin said. But maybe next time, we'll be the ones helping a weaker species. Maybe we can be better than the Krellians were. In her laboratory, Dr. Kim continued her research, but with a new focus. Instead of weapons, she studied alien biology to develop medicines. The plague that had devastated the Krellians had taught her something important. Earth's biological diversity was a treasure, not just a weapon. She had already developed cures for 3 previously untreatable alien diseases. The Council had offered her any position she wanted. She had refused them all. Her place was on Earth, helping her people and their allies. Dr. Han worked alongside her, cataloging the thousands of alien species in the Council databases. "There's so much to learn," he said excitedly. "So much knowledge. Some of these civilizations are millions of years old. And now they're learning from us too," Kim said, smiling. The first anniversary of the war's end was marked by a ceremony at the rebuilt United Nations building in Geneva. Representatives from across the galaxy attended. It was part memorial, part celebration, part warning. General Ryu gave the main speech. He was older now, grayer, but still strong. "We gather here to remember those we lost. 3 billion humans, millions of Krellians, thousands from allied species who came to our aid. We remember them not to celebrate war, but to honor their sacrifice and commit ourselves to peace." He paused, looking at the crowd. "But we also gather to send a message to the galaxy. Earth is here. We are not aggressive. We are not conquerors. But we are not victims either. Any species that sees humanity as weak, as primitive, as acceptable targets. Remember what happened to the Krellian Empire. Remember that humans are survivors, and survivors are the most dangerous beings in the universe." The crowd erupted in applause. Not just humans, but aliens too. They understood. Strength. Respected strength. That night, as the ceremonies ended, Captain Bake of the Velthori met privately with Ambassador Park. They stood on a balcony, looking at the stars. "My government wants to sign a formal alliance treaty with Earth," Bake said. "Mutual defense, shared technology, full partnership." Park nodded. "We'd welcome that. But you should know, Earth makes difficult allies. We don't back down from fights. We don't abandon our friends. If you ally with us, you might get dragged into conflicts you'd prefer to avoid." Bake laughed. "That's exactly why we want to ally with you. For too long, my people have avoided conflict by surrendering before the fight even starts. You've shown us another way. Stand firm, fight smart, never give up. We want to learn that from you." "Then we have a deal," Park said, shaking her hand. Similar conversations were happening across the galaxy. Earth was forming a new alliance network, not based on conquest or submission, but on mutual respect and shared defense. In deep space, monitoring stations picked up strange signals from a region beyond explored space. A new species, expanding aggressively, destroying any civilization in their path. The Council was already debating what to do. Admiral Kang brought the intelligence to the Earth Defense Committee. "This species, they're calling themselves the Vraks. They've destroyed 3 civilizations in the past year. The Council is frightened. What do they want us to do?" asked Park Woojin. "Nothing officially," Kang said, "but several Council members have quietly asked if Earth would be willing to advise on defense strategies." The committee members looked at each other. 6 months ago, Earth had been fighting for survival. Now, they were being asked to help defend other worlds. "We help them," Admiral Tay said firmly. "Not because we have to, because we can. Because if we don't, more billions will die like ours did." The vote was unanimous. Earth began sending military advisors to species threatened by the Vraks. Not to fight their wars for them, but to teach them what humanity had learned. How to fight smarter, not just harder. How to turn weaknesses into strengths. How to survive against impossible odds. The galaxy watched in amazement as the species they had dismissed as primitive became the teachers everyone wanted to learn from. On Genesis Station, now fully rebuilt and twice its original size, a new monument was unveiled. It showed a human hand and an alien hand clasped together, with stars in the background. The inscription read, "Alone we survive. Together we thrive." Admiral Tay stood at the ceremony, thinking about how far humanity had come. From a species nobody knew existed to a major galactic power. From victims to protectors. From alone to allied with dozens of worlds. "You look thoughtful," said Ambassador Park, standing beside him. "I'm thinking about Vix Thera," Tay admitted. "The Krellian commander. He's still in prison, waiting for trial. I visited him last week." "Why?" "I wanted to understand what he was thinking. Why he attacked us." Tay paused. "He said he thought we were weak because we were divided, because we had so many nations, so many languages, so many ways of thinking. He thought that made us fractured." "What did you tell him?" "I told him that's exactly what makes us strong. We learn to cooperate despite our differences. We learn to argue and debate and still work together. Unity through diversity, not uniformity." The Krellians only knew uniformity. One government, one way of thinking. When that failed, they had nothing else. Park nodded slowly. "That's actually profound. Don't sound so surprised," Tay said, smiling. They stood in comfortable silence, watching ships come and go from the station. Human ships, Velthori ships, Chixtar ships, all working together. Somewhere in the galaxy, another aggressive species was expanding. Another war was probably coming. But this time, Earth wouldn't face it alone. This time, humanity had friends, and the universe was learning a lesson that would echo through the ages. Never start a war with a species that spent 4 billion years learning how to survive on the galaxy's most dangerous planet. Never underestimate beings who had clawed their way from caves to stars through sheer stubborn will. Never mistake kindness for weakness, or peace for pacifism. The warning had been given. Earth had arrived, and the galaxy would be better for it. As long as everyone remembered the simple truth, humans were not the strongest species. They were not the smartest. They were not the oldest or most advanced, but they were survivors. And in a dangerous universe, that was the most important thing to be. The memorial on the moon bore a final inscription, added after the war. It was written in every language of Earth and every language of the Galactic Council. They attacked us because they thought we were weak. We fought back because we knew we were strong. We won because we refused to lose. Remember this, and peace will follow. And in the decades that came, peace did follow. Not perfect peace, not eternal peace, but real peace, earned through strength, maintained through vigilance, and protected by those who understood that survival was not a gift. It was a choice, and humanity had made theirs.